The cruise was supposed to be my retirement gift. A week at sea with my daughter, her husband, and my granddaughter. I paid my share, packed my bags, and circled the date in red on my calendar. Then, out of nowhere, my daughter looked me in the eye and said it was canceled. Budget issues, she claimed. I believed her, until the next morning when my son-in-law called to thank me for offering him my spot. I smiled. I said nothing. But as they boarded the ship without me, the captain made an emergency announcement, just as my phone lit up with 32 missed calls. What happened next was rather unexpected. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. I had circled the date on the calendar in thick red marker, the kind you only use for things you're really looking forward to. Weddings, graduations, retirement parties. This was supposed to be that kind of event. A family cruise. 7 nights. Caribbean waters. Sunrises with coffee, dinners at sea, my granddaughter showing me how to use the damn smartphone camera correctly so I wouldn't keep cutting off people's heads. I'd been dreaming about it for months, maybe longer than I even admitted to myself. It wasn't just the vacation, though I hadn't had one in years. It was the idea of being wanted, included, like I still mattered. I'd spent most of my life being the dependable one. I taught high school English for 35 years, the kind of job that slowly grinds you down unless you love it, and I did. But love wasn't enough to fatten a pension or protect your knees from the slow creep of arthritis. After my wife, Linda, passed away 8 years ago, I slid quietly into the role of the quiet helper. The babysitter, the backup wallet, the reliable yes man. And if I'm honest, a part of me clung to that role because it gave me purpose. Especially with Samantha, my only daughter. Raising her alone had been a masterclass in emotional restraint, financial juggling, and pretending not to cry when she slammed the door on her way to high school. We had made it through the hard years. Or so I thought. When she first mentioned the cruise, I'd nearly dropped the phone. "It's a thank you, Dad," she said. "For everything. You deserve a break, and we want to make some memories together." My throat had tightened, and I'd swallowed the lump quickly, chuckling like it didn't move me. "You sure you want to drag an old man on a floating hotel for a week?" I teased. "You're not old," she said. "You're classic." I should have held on to that moment longer. The day before the cruise, I was sitting on my porch with a cup of coffee, black, same as always, watching the squirrels wreck my bird feeder, when Samantha pulled up unexpectedly. She didn't look me in the eye right away. That was my first clue. "Hey, Dad," she said, all chirpy energy, but her fingers were fidgeting with the sleeves of her hoodie. "Got a minute?" I motioned for her to sit, suddenly nervous. "Everything okay?" She exhaled sharply. "So, the cruise. There's been a change." The way she said it, soft, rehearsed, made my stomach tighten. I leaned forward. "What kind of change?" She winced. "There was a screw-up with the travel agent. Budget issues, and the rooms got messed up. Basically, we had to make some cuts." She gave me a look that felt like someone putting a pillow over my face slowly. "We decided to cancel. For everyone's sake." I blinked, trying to understand. "Cancel? The whole trip?" She nodded too fast. "Yeah, I know. Total mess. Honestly, I'm furious too." 1,000 things flickered in my brain. The bags I'd already packed. The sunscreen. The sneakers I bought because Samantha said we'd be doing excursions, and, "You're not wearing those busted loafers, Dad." But I didn't ask questions. I just nodded slowly, swallowed my pride like a bitter vitamin, and said, "That's a shame. I was looking forward to it." Her face softened in a way I didn't like. "Pity. We'll do something else soon. I promise." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Sure, sweetheart. Let me know." She left shortly after that, claiming she had errands to run. I sat there on the porch for another hour, the coffee long cold, feeling like someone had pulled a rug out from under me, and I was too polite to say I'd fallen. That night, I watched TV with the volume low and stared at my suitcase in the hallway. Still zipped, still hopeful. I almost unpacked it, but I didn't. Not yet. The next morning, I was making toast when the phone rang. It was Brian, my son-in-law. I didn't dislike Brian. He was fine. Bland as unsalted soup, but he loved my daughter in his own awkward way and never raised his voice. which counted for something in this world. I answered on the third ring. "Hey, Dave," he said, too chipper for a canceled cruise. "Just wanted to say thanks again for offering up your spot." "Seriously, man. Means the world." I froze, holding the receiver like it had grown teeth. "Sorry. For the cruise," he continued. "I know Sam said it was last minute, but I really appreciate it. I wasn't gonna go, but she said you insisted I take your spot." I couldn't speak. "Anyway, we're headed to the port now. Just wanted to say thanks before we board." I finally found my voice. "Sure. No problem, Brian. Have a good time." He hung up with a casual later, man. And I stood there, the toast now burning in the toaster, smoke curling like a bad omen. My heart wasn't racing. It was slow, cold, heavy. They hadn't canceled the trip. They'd canceled me. I should have been angry. I should have called Samantha right then and demanded an explanation. But instead, I did what I always do. I smiled through it. I drove down to the port. I told myself I just wanted to see it with my own eyes, maybe for closure. But part of me still hoped it was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't. From the parking lot, I saw them boarding. Samantha in a wide-brimmed hat. Brian lugging suitcases. My granddaughter, Lily, wearing the sunglasses I bought her last Christmas. They were laughing, carefree, like I never existed. I stood there in the heat, sun blazing against my skin, the sound of families chattering and children squealing all around me. And then, just as I turned to leave, an announcement echoed from the ship's intercom. "Attention passengers, this is the captain. Due to a medical concern on board, we are temporarily delaying departure. Emergency personnel are en route. We appreciate your patience." I blinked, confused. Something felt wrong. I checked my phone. 32 missed calls. All from Samantha. I stood still in the middle of that buzzing parking lot as the screen glared up at me. 32 missed calls. Not 2. Not 5. 32. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I tried to unlock the phone and mistyped my code 3 times in a row. I didn't move to call her back right away. I just stared at the number like it was a countdown I hadn't known was ticking. I finally hit voicemail. The first one came in barely 20 minutes after Brian's call. "Dad, please call me back. Something happened. It's not serious, I think, but just call, okay?" Then the next. "Okay, so Lily's a little shaken up. We told her you couldn't come, but she got upset. She's crying, and just call me, please." Another. "This isn't funny, Dad. Pick up the phone." By the 10th message, her tone had changed completely. "Dad, what the hell? We need to talk. Lily overheard Brian saying you gave up your ticket, and now she thinks you're sick or something. She's in the infirmary. She won't stop crying. We told her you were fine, but now she won't believe us unless she hears your voice." The last message was only a few minutes before I'd arrived at the port. "Dad, if you're there, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry we lied. We didn't think it would be a big deal, and now everything is just. Please, please call me back. I don't care what you say, just let me know you're okay." I lowered the phone slowly. That same numb coldness was still coursing through me. Not even anger yet, just disbelief. The kind of disbelief that doesn't hit like a slap. It settles in like fog. I didn't call her back. Not then. I watched them from the car as medical staff walked up the gangway, probably to check on Lily. And I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit before. They hadn't just lied. They'd assumed I'd accept it. That I'd quietly step aside like I always had. That I'd disappear without complaint, make room for them to have their memory-making, while I faded into the background like some museum piece no one wants to throw away, but nobody really uses anymore either. I sat in the car for what must have been an hour, just watching the ship from afar as it loomed over the dock, gleaming, massive, and different. And all I could think was, they really didn't think I'd say anything, that I'd matter enough to fight for. Not even to be honest with. By the time I pulled back into my driveway that evening, the sky had turned orange with the kind of sunset people take pictures of. I didn't even bother unpacking the car. I just went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and listened to the silence of my house. It was the kind of silence that didn't offer peace. It just echoed all the ways I'd been made small. I stared at my phone one more time. Another voicemail had come in. This one was from Lily. Her voice was soft, wobbly, but composed in the way kids try to be when they think adults aren't telling the whole truth. "Hi, Grandpa. Mommy said you're okay, but that you just didn't want to come. I told her that wasn't true. You said we'd get ice cream at the Bahamas. I saved my money for it. So, I just want to know if you're mad at me, or if I did something. I covered my face with both hands and let out a breath that felt like it had been building for years. I wasn't mad at her. I wasn't even really mad at Brian. No, the betrayal, the real one, was Samantha. The little girl I carried through rainy soccer practices and held when she failed her driver's test, and helped through childbirth when her husband nearly passed out. The one I thought would never lie to me, not like this. I didn't call her back that night. I didn't listen to any more messages. I poured myself a small glass of whiskey, sat in the living room, and finally unpacked the suitcase one piece at a time. Not carefully, not slowly, just deliberately, one item after another. The folded shirts, the new swim trunks, the worn leather sandals that still had beach sand from a trip Linda and I took to Santa Cruz 20 years ago. And as I put the last shirt back in the drawer, I said out loud, soft, just to the room, just to myself, let them have their cruise. Because I knew, even then, that what they'd taken from me was never just a vacation. It was a seat at the table, and I wasn't going to beg for it back. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator and the occasional bark of some dog down the block. Every few hours, my phone would buzz on the nightstand. Another message, another call. I stopped checking after a while. Not because I didn't care. I cared too much, and I knew if I kept letting their voices in, I'd crack. I needed a wall, even if it was temporary, even if it was made of nothing more than silence. The next morning, I got up before the sun. Old habit. Retirement hadn't beaten the teacher schedule out of me. I still woke up like I had papers to grade. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper open in front of me, even though I wasn't reading it. My eyes kept drifting to the window, to the street, like maybe Samantha would pull up and walk in like none of it had happened. But she didn't. Instead, my phone rang again. I almost didn't answer, but the name on the screen wasn't hers. Marjorie Wallace. Marjorie was a friend from my old book club. Widow, sharp as a tack, the kind of woman who never said something twice and never said anything she didn't mean. We'd kept in touch over the years. She called maybe once every couple of months, just enough to make sure I was still alive. I answered, "Morning, Marjorie." "Morning? You sound like you haven't had your coffee yet." "I've had 2 cups." "Well, damn. I'd hate to hear you on none." She paused. I heard something. I felt my jaw tighten. "Yeah." Samantha posted a photo. From the ship. Tag said, "Family first," or something nauseating like that. "You weren't in it." I didn't answer. "I'm guessing you were supposed to be." I nodded, then remembered she couldn't see me. I was. A beat of silence. What did they do? I told her everything. Not in a rant. Just the facts, stripped down and dry like firewood. Samantha's lie. Brian's call. The missed voicemails. Lily's message. The suitcase, the cruise, the emergency delay. Every detail I could remember, spoken in that flat, careful tone I'd learned from years of talking down angry teenagers in classrooms. When I finished, Marjorie didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "Jesus Christ." I gave a hollow laugh. "Yeah. You gonna talk to her?" "I don't know. David." "I don't know, Marjorie." She sighed. "You've spent your whole life bending over backward for that girl. I know you love her. But if you don't plant your feet now, you're never getting up again." I let her words hang in the air. I didn't want to admit they stung because they were true. After we hung up, I sat back and stared at the ceiling. I felt like someone had taken the floor out from under my life and replaced it with quicksand. The deeper I stood still, the more I sank. But I wasn't ready to move yet. Around noon, I checked my phone again. No new calls. But then, a text. "Brian, hey Dave, can you talk?" I stared at it for a long time. Of all the people, I never expected him to be the first to reach out directly. I wrote back, "What for?" He replied almost instantly, "I messed up. I owe you an apology." I didn't answer. He sent another. "Just give me 5 minutes. Please." I didn't want to hear his voice. I didn't want to hear any voice that reminded me of that betrayal. But something told me that letting him speak might be the only way to hear the truth that Samantha wouldn't admit. So I called. He answered on the first ring. "Dave? Man. Thank you. Make it quick." There was a pause. "Okay. So, I didn't know Samantha had told you the trip was canceled." She just told me that you offered me your spot. Said you didn't want to do the excursions, and the walking would be too much on your knees. I asked her twice if you were cool with it, and she said, absolutely. He's the one who brought it up. I didn't speak. I wanted him to feel the weight of that silence. He kept going. It didn't feel right, but I believed her. I thought, okay, maybe he's just tired. But when the emergency thing happened on board, and Lily freaked out, that's when I knew something was off. She was crying for you. Said you promised her ice cream in the Bahamas. She told me the cruise was canceled. I said slowly. Budget problems. Travel agent issues. He let out a long exhale. Jesus. Yeah. I didn't. I never would have taken that spot if I knew you didn't want to give it up. I swear to you. I believe you, I said, and I meant it. Brian didn't have enough backbone to lie like that convincingly. I just thought you should know, he added. I'm sorry, Dave. You didn't deserve that. No, I didn't. We ended the call soon after. I sat with the truth for a long time, like it was a bruise I couldn't stop pressing. She hadn't just lied. She'd manufactured the whole narrative, built a fiction where I was suddenly the one bowing out, the tired old man happy to sit one out so the family could enjoy themselves. She made me disappear from the story, and that hurt more than any lie. That afternoon, I decided to drive out to the old walking trail Linda and I used to visit on weekends. It curled around a small lake on the edge of town. Back in the day, we'd bring sandwiches, sometimes a blanket, and just sit for hours watching ducks bicker like old couples. I hadn't been back since the year after she passed, mostly because the memories hit too hard. But that day, I needed the space. I needed to be somewhere the air didn't smell like betrayal and cheap apologies. I walked slow, my knees complaining the whole way, but I didn't care. I passed families with strollers, joggers with earbuds, teenagers laughing too loudly. Everyone seemed like they had somewhere to be, something to look forward to. I stopped at a bench under a maple tree, just starting to yellow with the season. I sat down and took a deep breath. I didn't cry. I wasn't even sad. Not in that fragile, sentimental way people like to package heartbreak. What I felt was quieter, colder. Like someone had switched off the part of me that always made excuses for other people. I kept thinking about that little red mark on the calendar, how I'd circled the cruise date like a kid circling Christmas. I'd bought a passport wallet. A freaking passport wallet. It was still in its plastic wrapper in the drawer by the front door. I'd practiced using the damn cruise app on my phone so I could check the daily itinerary without bothering Samantha. I'd even made a playlist, At Sea with Grandpa, just to pass the time on the deck. None of it mattered. None of it had ever really mattered. That was the real heartbreak. They didn't just exclude me. They planned to exclude me and counted on me being too passive to react. I sat on that bench until the sun dipped behind the tree line, and the wind picked up with that crisp bite that says autumn is around the corner. I watched the lake ripple under the fading light and thought about all the times I'd sat there with Linda, her head on my shoulder, her voice in my ears saying things like, "We've done good, haven't we?" I used to believe her. Now I wasn't so sure. When I got home, it was dark. The porch light flickered to life as I walked up the steps, casting long shadows on the driveway. I paused at the front door, pulled my phone out, and finally typed out a message. To Samantha, we need to talk. In person, not over the phone, not through Brian. Come by when you're back. I didn't write please. I didn't ask if it was a good time. I was done playing soft. She didn't respond that night, but I knew she would. She'd have no choice, because this time I wasn't stepping aside. She showed up 3 days later. I heard the knock around 10 a.m., soft but deliberate, the kind of knock that says, I know I'm not welcome, but I came anyway. I didn't rush to the door. I took my time, finishing my sip of coffee, placing the mug gently in the sink. When I opened it, there she stood, Samantha, my daughter. Her eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, but her shoulders were drawn tight. She looked smaller than usual, like guilt had taken up space in her frame and pushed everything else out. Hi, Dad, she said, her voice thin. I stepped aside, offering no hug, no smile. Come in. She walked in slowly, glancing around the living room like she expected things to have changed. They hadn't. The same beige couch. The same framed photo of her, Brian, and Lily on the mantel. The same faint smell of lavender from the candle I lit every morning out of habit, not sentiment. She sat on the edge of the armchair, legs crossed, hands clasped tight in her lap. I didn't sit. I stood across from her, arms folded. So, she pulled off her sunglasses and set them on the coffee table, then met my eyes. I messed up. I didn't respond. She swallowed. I didn't know how to say it. We'd overbooked the room. Brian's parents were supposed to watch the kids, but they backed out. Suddenly, we had 2 extra people and only 1 cabin. We couldn't afford a second. The cruise wouldn't let us change the reservation. I panicked. You panicked, I repeated. Yes. So you lied. She flinched. Yes. To your own father. Tears welled up, but I didn't move. I let her sit in it. I thought, she began, then stopped. I thought you wouldn't mind. That you'd understand. Understand what? She looked down at her hands. That we needed this. Brian and I have been fighting. Lily's been overwhelmed with school. The family's been stressed. I thought maybe you'd be okay sitting this one out. Because I'm expendable? No. God, no. She looked up, eyes pleading. You're always there, Dad. Always. I didn't think you'd. I don't know. Make a big deal out of it. I didn't, I said flatly. Until Brian thanked me for giving up my spot. Her face crumpled slightly. He wasn't supposed to call you. I blinked. So now I see. The issue wasn't that you lied. It's that I found out. She didn't deny it. I was going to tell you. After we got back. I let that sit for a second. Then I leaned against the wall, arms still folded. You looked me in the eye, Sam. You sat on that porch and told me it was canceled. I know. You let me sit with a packed suitcase and a full heart, thinking something fell through. When the only thing that fell through was your decency. Her lip trembled. I didn't know how to make it work. And I thought if anyone would understand sacrifice, it'd be you. That hit harder than I expected. Because she was right. I was the one who always sacrificed. That was the script she'd grown up watching. Me giving. Me bending. Me putting everyone else first. It had become the family religion. And now that I'd finally said no, it wasn't just shocking, it was offensive. You didn't give me the chance to say yes or no, I said. You decided for me. I thought I was protecting you, she whispered. From what? I snapped. From being included? From watching my granddaughter make memories I thought I was part of? From the only family I have. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. She was crying now. Silent, careful tears. The kind that fall when you still think there's a chance to fix things if you cry just right. I'm sorry, she said again. I exhaled, slow and tired. I don't need an apology, Sam. I need honesty. And right now, I don't trust you. That landed hard. Her whole body stiffened. So what then? We just don't talk. I didn't say that. Then what are you saying? I looked her dead in the eyes. I'm saying things are going to change. You don't get to lie and walk back into my life like nothing happened. That's not how this works anymore. Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but then she closed it. I get it, she said quietly. I'll go. She stood up slowly and reached for her sunglasses. As she opened the front door, she hesitated. Lily really missed you. She cried a lot. I didn't respond. She said the cruise felt empty without you. Still, I said nothing. Then, without another word, she walked out and gently closed the door behind her. I didn't move for a long time. Later that night, I sat in my recliner with the TV on but muted, the screen flickering shadows across the living room. I had the voicemail from Lily playing in my head again. The way she asked if she'd done something wrong. That part cut deep, deeper than Samantha's betrayal, because it reminded me just how many people suffer in the ripple of someone else's choices. I reached for the small wooden box on the side table, the one Linda used to keep her letters and ticket stubs and little mementos she insisted we save. I opened it slowly and pulled out a photo. Samantha, age 6, beaming from a merry-go-round, her face painted like a butterfly. I used to carry that picture in my wallet until the corners wore out. I held it now like it could anchor me to something good, something that hadn't rotted yet. The thing about being a parent is that your love doesn't shrink just because your child disappoints you. It bends, it bruises, but it never quite breaks. I still loved Samantha. I always would. But that love had changed form now. It was no longer the open-palmed, come-home-anytime kind. It had calcified, grown edges. Because when someone shows you they're willing to use your love against you, you either wise up or bleed out. And I wasn't bleeding for anyone anymore. The next morning, I got a knock on the door. Not Samantha this time. It was Lily, 12 years old, braided hair, backpack slung over her shoulder. She looked unsure, like she wasn't sure if she was welcome. I opened the door. "Hey, kiddo." She bit her lip. "Hi, Grandpa." I stepped aside. "Come in." She sat at the kitchen table while I made her cocoa the old-fashioned way. Milk, stovetop, a pinch of cinnamon. Just like Linda used to make it. She watched me closely, like she was waiting to say something but didn't know how to start. "I didn't know they lied to you," she said finally. "Mom told me you didn't want to come. I thought maybe you didn't want to hang out with me." My throat tightened. I set the mug in front of her and crouched beside the chair. "Lily, you listen to me. There's not a day in this world where I wouldn't want to spend time with you. You hear me?" She nodded slowly, tears brimming. "I wanted to be there," I added. "I was supposed to be. But sometimes adults make bad choices, and we have to decide what we do with that." "Are you mad at Mom?" I hesitated. "I'm disappointed. And sometimes when people disappoint you, even people you love, you have to protect yourself for a while." She looked down into her cocoa. "I wish you came. It wasn't the same." "I know, sweetheart." I gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "But maybe next time, we plan something just you and me." She smiled a little at that. We didn't talk much after that. She finished her drink, gave me a long hug, and left with a promise to text me later. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt a small piece of myself start to breathe again. Not because anything had been fixed, but because I finally knew where I stood. I invited them to dinner. Not because I was ready to forgive, and certainly not because I missed their company. I invited them because silence had become too comfortable for them. And when people grow comfortable in your absence, sometimes you have to remind them you're still there. I kept the invitation short, just a text to Samantha. "Dinner. Sunday. 6 p.m. Everyone." She responded in under a minute. "We'll be there." No emojis. No love you. Just 3 words. Good. I spent that Sunday preparing the way Linda used to. Table set by 4. Roast in the oven by 4:30. Potatoes peeled, salad tossed, bread warmed. I even pulled out the wine glasses, not because I expected celebration, but because there's something about crystal clinking that sharpens a conversation. Every dish was intentional, nostalgic, anchoring. The kind of meal that reminds people what family is supposed to feel like before you gut them with the truth. They arrived right on time. Brian came in first, carrying a bottle of cheap red wine like a peace offering. Samantha followed, looking tired, and Lily trailed behind with an awkward smile. "Smells great in here," Brian said, setting the bottle on the counter. I nodded but didn't respond. Samantha stood there for a beat before reaching out for a hug. I let her. Brief. Hello. Then turned back toward the kitchen. We ate quietly at first. Small talk floated between bites. Lily's school project, Brian's new work schedule, a passing joke about Crew's food being overrated. I didn't laugh. I wanted them to feel the weight of every fork scrape, every sip of water. Halfway through the meal, I set down my glass. "You remember the story about my dad and the bicycle?" I asked, my voice calm. Brian glanced up, confused. Samantha stiffened. Lily looked curious. "No." I nodded. "I was 9. My bike got stolen. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. My dad found out. And we didn't have much back then, but a week later he showed up with a brand new one. Red, shiny, the kind with those stupid streamers on the handlebars. I rode it every day like it was a Cadillac." "That's sweet," Lily said. I looked at Samantha. I didn't find out until I was grown that my dad sold his fishing gear to buy it. Said he didn't need fish when his boy needed wheels. Samantha dropped her eyes to her plate. I kept going. "That bike taught me more about love than any lesson I got in school. Because it wasn't just a bike. It was sacrifice. Quiet, painful, and invisible to everyone else." "Dad?" Samantha started, but I raised a hand. "I don't tell that story to make you feel guilty," I said. "I tell it so you understand the weight of giving something up for family, and the insult of being taken instead." The room went still. "You looked me in the eye," I continued. "You told me the trip was canceled. Not that you needed help. Not that there was a problem. You just erased me." Samantha's voice cracked. I didn't know how to ask. "You didn't ask at all." Brian tried to interject, but I turned to him. "You I can forgive. You were caught in the middle, and at least you told me the truth when you figured it out." Samantha's jaw tightened. So what? You think I'm a bad daughter now? I think you're a grown woman who made a coward's choice, I said. And worse, you used my history of silence as a weapon. Tears welled up in her eyes. That's not fair. It's not supposed to be fair, I said louder now. Fair would have been you telling me the truth. Fair would have been letting me decide if I wanted to step aside. Fair would have been respecting me enough to treat me like a person instead of a problem. Lily shifted uncomfortably, eyes bouncing between us. You're always making everything about guilt, Samantha snapped suddenly. Every conversation turns into some speech about how much you've sacrificed. You want me to feel bad forever. No, I said. I want you to feel responsible. That shut her up. I stood slowly, collected the empty plates, and walked them to the sink. I needed to move. I needed space between me and the storm I'd just unleashed. When I turned back around, Samantha was looking at Lily, embarrassed, unraveling. Let her go, I said. She didn't do anything wrong. Samantha wiped her eyes and nodded. Lily stood and came over to hug me tight. I'm sorry things got messy, she whispered. It's not your fault, sweetheart. Brian stood next. Do you want us to leave? I want space, I said. And I want honesty moving forward. That's it. They gathered their things and filed out slowly. Samantha hesitated at the door, then turned. I didn't think this would break us, she said. It didn't, I replied. But it changed us. And you don't get to decide what that looks like. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. And then she was gone. The house felt heavy once the door clicked shut. The kind of heavy that settles in your bones and makes the floorboards creak louder than they should. I stood there in the kitchen for a while, staring at the leftovers I'd spent hours preparing, now sitting cold and untouched on their plates. It was a good meal. Comforting, rich, honest. Just like the words I'd offered. But honesty doesn't always taste sweet going down. I poured myself a finger of scotch, not out of habit, but because I needed something to soften the edges of the night. I sat back in my recliner and looked around the room. Same pictures on the mantel. Same ticking clock above the doorway. But everything felt different now, like the furniture had shifted half an inch and I was just now noticing. I thought back to when Samantha was a teenager, 15 and furious because I wouldn't let her go to a party with boys I didn't know. She screamed at me that night, said I was ruining her life, said I didn't trust her. She was right about one thing. I didn't trust easily. Not back then, and not now. But the difference was, back then, she hadn't earned it yet. Now, she'd thrown it away. The truth is, I would have given up that cruise spot if she'd asked. Hell, I probably would have paid for the extra room myself, just to make sure they all went. I would have smiled through the disappointment and told myself I did the right thing because that's what dads do. But she didn't give me the chance. And that was the betrayal. Not the seat on the ship. Not the missed island sunsets or the half-packed suitcase. It was the way she made the choice for me and assumed I'd be okay with it. That I'd just fade back into the wallpaper like I always had. I wasn't mad because I didn't get to go. I was mad because I never got to say no. That night, I wrote a short letter. Not to send. Just to write. Dear Samantha, you were my whole world once. I carried you on my shoulders until you could stand on your own. I cheered at your soccer games, even when you played defense and never touched the ball. I stayed up all night before your SATs and made pancakes in the morning like it would somehow help. I was there for every heartbreak, every move, every mess. I don't expect medals. I did those things because I love you. Still do. But love, at my age, comes with limits. With boundaries. With self-preservation. You taught me something these past few weeks. That silence isn't noble. It's just quiet permission. And I won't be quiet anymore. Love doesn't mean disappearing. It means being seen, heard, counted. I'm done making myself smaller to fit into your version of family. If you want me in your life, I'll be here. But only as someone you respect, not as someone you use. Dad. I folded the letter and placed it in the wooden box with Linda's things. It didn't need to be mailed. I already knew she wouldn't forget it. I thought things would quiet down after the dinner. They didn't. If anything, the silence got louder, stretched thinner, like a wire pulled so tight you could hear it hum. I didn't expect a parade or a public apology, but I figured Samantha would retreat into herself, maybe call in a week or two to circle the conversation again with polished guilt and a hallmark voice. What I didn't expect was for it to go public. 3 days after the dinner, I got a phone call from my niece, Emma. She's one of those women who speaks in a rush like her life's a group chat, and everyone's behind on updates. Uncle David, she said, voice already 3 octaves higher than usual. You okay? I paused mid-rake in the yard. I'm fine. What? There was a beat. Did you see what Samantha posted? I could feel my stomach drop, not dramatically, but in that slow, sinking way that lets you know you're about to read something you can't unread. No. What is it? I mean, it's cryptic. Not directly about you, but it's about you. Emma. Okay. It's a photo from the cruise. Everyone's smiling. Caption says, sometimes we have to make hard choices for the peace of our family. If people can't respect that, maybe they were never part of it to begin with. And people are commenting. Like a lot. I didn't answer right away. I just stared out across the yard, watching dead leaves stir in the wind. You still there? Emma asked. Yeah, I'm here. She made herself the victim, Emma said. And it's working. All these people saying how strong she is, how family is hard, how sometimes you have to cut out the toxic ones. I almost laughed. Toxic. That word gets thrown around so much these days, it's lost all meaning. People use it now the way we used to use difficult or stubborn, except now it comes with justification. Call someone toxic, and suddenly you're not wrong. You're surviving. I don't care what she posts, I said. Let her have her audience. But it's not right, Emma argued. You're not the bad guy. I know. That doesn't bother you. Oh, it bothers me, I said. But not as much as what she's already taken. I didn't go online to look at it. I didn't scroll through the comments. I didn't engage. That was my victory, not giving her more of my attention than she'd already siphoned away. But the consequences found their way into my life anyway. At the grocery store, I ran into Mrs. Jenkins, who taught kindergarten when Samantha was little. Her smile was tight. David, she said, patting my arm. Just so you know, I've always thought highly of you. Sometimes kids just drift, don't they? I nodded. Sometimes they do. At church, people looked at me differently. Not with pity, not quite, but with that awkward politeness reserved for people going through things you read about in community Facebook groups. Even Marjorie called again. She posted it on Facebook, David, with the family cruise photo as the cover, like it was a campaign poster. I know. She's rewriting the story in real time. People will believe whatever version makes them feel safest, I said. If they need to believe I'm the villain, they'll sleep better thinking they'd never do what she did. Are you going to respond? Nope. You sure? Yep. She was quiet for a moment. I'm proud of you. That landed harder than I expected, because I hadn't heard those words in a long, long time. That weekend, I went through old photo albums. Not to wallow, just to remember. Sometimes, when someone betrays you, it taints everything. The happy moments feel fake in hindsight, like someone dubbed over a favorite song with static. I didn't want that. I wanted to reclaim my own memories. I flipped through pictures of me and Samantha at the zoo, at the lake, in front of our first crummy little apartment with a broken stove and chipped tiles. Linda's handwriting was scrawled on the back of one, her first sleepover. You stayed up all night outside her door. I had. I remembered that night. She was 7, and her best friend was afraid of the dark. So I sat in the hallway with a flashlight and a book just in case they needed me. Those memories were still real. Her betrayal didn't undo the love I gave. It just made it clear that I couldn't give it the same way anymore. Later that day, I got a text from Brian. Just wanted to say I understand if you're angry, but I didn't know she was going to post that. I'm sorry. I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to punish him. He was caught in the crossfire. But I also didn't want to offer easy absolution. An hour later, I replied, appreciate the message. My door's still open for Lily. The rest is up to her mother. He didn't write back. Didn't need to. That line was drawn now. On Monday, I got a knock at the door around dinner time. It was Lily. Alone. I opened the door and gave her a small smile. You just showing up now, huh? She shrugged, sheepish. Mom thinks I'm at Maya's. I stepped aside. Come on in. Hope you're hungry. She dropped her backpack by the coat rack like she'd lived here her whole life. In a way, she kind of had. Every birthday, every holiday, every summer weekend. My home was her second home, and she moved through it now with a kind of familiarity that twisted my heart. I heated up some stew I'd made, poured her a root beer, and we sat at the table like nothing had changed, until she put her spoon down and said, People at school are talking about the post. I looked up. Yeah. Some of the parents showed it to their kids. You're kind of infamous now. That made me smile, against my will. Infamous, huh? Yeah. They think you're, like, some bitter old guy who didn't want us to go. Is that what you think? No, she said quickly. I think they don't know anything. She hesitated, then added, I asked Mom to take it down. She said she didn't mean for it to hurt anyone, but she also didn't delete it. Because it's not about me, I said. It's about how she wants to feel. Lily looked at me for a long time, then asked a question so simple and cutting I nearly dropped my spoon. Did she always lie like that? When she was my age? I paused. That question wasn't about the post. It was about the pattern, the foundation, the DNA of how someone becomes the kind of person who rewrites the truth and calls it healing. No, I said finally. But she learned somewhere along the way that people forgive her faster if she makes herself the victim. Lily nodded. I don't want to be like that. I reached across the table and took her hand. You won't be, I said, because you already see it. That's more than most adults can say. She stayed for another hour, working on her homework while I read a book in the recliner. We didn't talk much after that, but there was something healing in the quiet. Two people who'd been collateral damage in someone else's need to be right, just being. When Brian came to pick her up, he didn't say much. Just gave me a nod and a thank you. But before she left, Lily turned around and hugged me again, harder this time. I love you, Grandpa. I love you too, kiddo. And as the door shut behind them, I felt something shift. Not a full repair, not yet, but a small, firm root of something real and resilient beginning to take hold. Fall arrived like a quiet visitor. The heat gave way to crisp mornings, leaves began curling into gold and rust, and my porch smelled like wood smoke from the neighbors' first fires of the season. I'd always loved this time of year. It made you want to slow down, take stock, maybe sharpen your edges for the winter ahead. I'd been doing exactly that, sharpening. In the weeks since dinner, I didn't hear much from Samantha. A few scattered texts about Lily's school pictures, a forwarded email from her dentist, the kind of dry, logistical communication that might pass between colleagues or distant cousins. It was clear she didn't know how to move forward. That was fine. I didn't either. But I wasn't in a rush. I'd spent the last few years moving at everyone else's pace. Retiring early so I could help out more. Rearranging weekends to babysit at a moment's notice. Opening my wallet more often than I opened my mouth. I was done with that now. A few days after Halloween, I booked a train trip up the coast. Not an expensive one. Not some flashy retirement cruise or find-yourself expedition. Just a quiet ride through redwoods and rain, a few small towns, some ocean views. Enough motion to feel alive again. Enough stillness to finally listen to myself. I didn't tell Samantha. I didn't know her that. On the train, I sat next to a woman named Helen, a retired nurse who lost her husband the same year I lost Linda. We talked about our grandkids, our knees, our favorite pie recipes. Somewhere around hour 6, she said something that stuck with me. You know what's harder than losing someone? She said, looking out the window, realizing they were never really with you to begin with. It sat heavy between us. No commentary needed. I returned home 5 days later with a lighter heart. I'd walked the beach alone in a town where no one knew my name. I'd read 2 books. I'd taken my own damn photo on a bluff without asking anyone to smile for the camera. It wasn't some grand awakening, but it was a beginning. I was finally living for myself. A week later, Samantha texted again. This time, it was more than a school update. Hey, can we talk soon? Just us. I think we need it. I stared at the message for a long time. She hadn't taken down the cruise post. She hadn't apologized for it either. But maybe this was something. Maybe she was ready to face what she'd done, not just to me, but to us. So I texted back. My schedule's open. Coffee shop on Main. Saturday, 10 a.m. She showed up late, of course. Not by much. Just enough to remind me that some people never really stop testing your grace. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around a paper cup, no makeup, hair pulled back like she wanted to be taken seriously. I've been thinking a lot, she began. I waited. I know I hurt you. And I know the cruise thing was more than a mistake. It was a choice. A selfish one. I nodded. That's true. She blinked. I guess I thought if I explained myself enough, you'd soften. I'm not interested in soft anymore. Her shoulders dropped. Then what are you interested in? Respect, clarity, boundaries. Her lips twitched, like she wanted to argue. But she didn't. You embarrassed me, I said. You lied to my face and then told the world a version that made me look like a bitter old man. You didn't just hurt me, Sam. You made sure other people saw me through your hurt. I was angry, she admitted. I felt guilty and didn't know what to do with it. So I made it your fault. And she looked down. And I was wrong. That was the closest I was going to get to real accountability. And that was okay. Because I wasn't there for her closure. I was there for mine. I'm not cutting you out, I said. But I'm not putting myself back in either. Not in the same way. I understand. You've got your family. You've got your life. I'll be here when it's genuine. But if you ever lie to me like that again, or use me as your scapegoat, we're done. Completely. She nodded. We sat in silence for a bit after that. The coffee between us went cold. People came and went. The world kept turning. Eventually, she stood. I'll call before Thanksgiving. Only if it's honest, I said. She didn't hug me. Didn't cry. She just left, quiet, subdued, changed in a way I couldn't quite measure. And maybe she'd grow from this. Maybe she wouldn't. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. That night, I sat on the porch with a blanket around my legs and a cup of chamomile in my hand. The air was sharp. The sky above was clean. I thought about all the ways I used to bend to keep the peace. How often I let love excuse behavior that should have never been tolerated. And I thought, no more. They took my seat on that ship. But they also gave me something in return, clarity. They showed me who they were when they thought I'd never say anything. And I showed myself who I could be when I finally did. When your silence becomes the expectation, speaking up is the most radical thing you can do. David didn't just lose a cruise. He lost his place in a family narrative that only worked if he stayed quiet. If this story hit close to home, tell us in the comments. Have you ever had to draw a line with your own family? And what happened when you finally did? Your voice might be the one someone else needs to hear right now.